Have you ever felt the agonizing sensation of your own veins being drained dry? I am not talking about a physical wound, but the terrifying reality of pouring every drop of your sweat, your tears, and your brilliant mind into a shared goal, only to be shoved into the freezing shadows at the exact moment of glory. Imagine standing there, broken and gasping for air, forced to watch a worthless parasite wear the crown forged from your very own sacrifices. It is a soul-shredding violation. It is the kind of profound betrayal that violently erodes your identity, leaving you in the dark, begging the silence to answer if your existence even matters at all. Wolf King Stories warmly welcomes you to a journey that will tear down the illusions of fairness in this world. If this raw truth resonates with the scars you carry, please hit that subscribe button right now to support the channel. Your encouragement is the absolute driving force that allows me to keep bringing these intense, psychological tales to life. And trust me, you will not want to miss how this story ends. Close your eyes and step with me into the suffocating abyss of the Sovereign's Hall. This is no place for the faint of heart. It is a colossal, oppressive Gothic cathedral of judgment, where the only light permitted to enter bleeds through stained glass windows, casting pools of crimson across the freezing black marble floor, looking disturbingly like fresh blood. The air here is thick, heavy, and choked with the scent of ancient burning incense mingling with the metallic stench of rusted weaponry mounted on the stone walls. Surrounding a massive circular table sits the Council of Elders. They are nothing but dark, gray-robed phantoms, their faces entirely swallowed by deep hoods, sitting in absolute, terrifying silence like statues of pure condemnation. You do not just see the power, the subjugation, and the suffocating traditionalism in this room, you breathe it in. You can feel the weight of centuries of tyranny suspended in every single speck of dust floating in the stagnant air. Right in the dead center of this agonizing tension, 3 members of the Carter bloodline stand as the most sickening, yet flawless portrait of a severely dysfunctional family system. Seated upon a massive throne carved into the snarling visage of a wolf is Alpha Gregory. He is the father, the supreme leader, yet if you look into his piercing, icy eyes, you will not find a single microscopic trace of paternal warmth. His gaze burns only with absolute dictatorship and ruthless political calculation. Positioned proudly at his right hand is Victoria, the undeniable golden child. She is a radiant, blinding vision draped in cascading crimson silk, her golden hair curled to a sickening perfection, heavy diamond pendants resting against her collarbone. She stands completely straight, her chin lifted high with a smug, half-concealed smirk of supreme arrogance. She is the glittering illusion, the flawless, manufactured facade that Alpha Gregory desperately wishes to parade before the world. But I see through her, and soon, you will too. Beneath that breathtakingly expensive exterior lies a cavernous void, a pathetic parasite who sustains her glittering life by feeding entirely off the unacknowledged labor of another. And then, forced to stand 10 paces away, utterly isolated and exposed in the center of the unforgiving hall, is Evelyn, the spare, the scapegoat. The visual violence of the contrast between these two sisters is a brutal psychological attack in itself. Evelyn is draped in an old, frayed ash-gray dress, devoid of any jewelry, untouched by cosmetics. Her dull brown hair is tied back in a desperate hurry, her frail shoulders slouched under an invisible, crushing weight, and her pale face is bowed toward the unforgiving stone. But if you dare to look closer, if you truly examine the profound exhaustion etched into Evelyn's features, you will realize it is not the weariness of the weak or the lazy. It is the tragic aftermath of countless sleepless nights. It is the physical manifestation of silent, agonizing devotion that has been mercilessly ground into dust beneath the grinding gears of a psychopathic family machine. She stands there like a fading ghost, holding her breath, silently waiting for a brutal execution order she already knows is destined to pierce straight through her shattered heart. The silence that hung over that miserable girl was finally shattered by the sharp, authoritative clearing of Alpha Gregory's throat, signaling the commencement of a theft so vile it would redefine the very meaning of family. He stood up slowly, the heavy fur of his ceremonial cloak dragging against the ancient stone, and unrolled a massive parchment sealed with black wax. It was the Obsidian Treaty. For those of you who do not understand the gravity of this document, let me make it painfully clear. This was the singular diplomatic masterpiece that would pull their entire pack back from the brink of absolute starvation and a bloody, unwinnable war with the Northern Territories. Every single word, every brilliant tactical concession, and every binding magical clause on that parchment had been painstakingly drafted by Evelyn. It was her blood that had smeared the rough drafts when she fell asleep at her desk, her lungs that had breathed in the toxic fumes of the archives for 6 agonizing months, while Victoria was busy attending lavish galas and trying on imported silks. Yet, as Alpha Gregory's booming voice echoed through the cathedral, praising the unprecedented genius of the treaty, his icy eyes did not look toward the ash-gray figure of his youngest daughter. Instead, he turned his proud gaze directly to the glowing, crimson-draped parasite at his right. He announced, with a sickening swelling of paternal pride, that Victoria the Magnificent Golden Child had single-handedly orchestrated the pack's salvation. Imagine the sheer, visceral horror of that moment. Evelyn's breath hitched in her throat, a sharp, ragged sound that was swallowed completely by the immediate, thunderous applause of the gray-robed elders. She watched, paralyzed by a sickening wave of vertigo, as Victoria stepped forward with practiced, theatrical humility. The Golden Child lowered her head, accepting the thunderous adoration with a perfectly calculated smile, her diamond pendants catching the crimson light. Evelyn's stomach violently contorted. It was a profound physical nausea, the kind that makes your ears ring and your vision blur. She had foolishly believed, against every historical precedent in her wretched life, that this would be the day the invisible chains would break. She had believed that undeniable, tangible proof of her genius would finally force her father to see her, to love her, to just once acknowledge that she was worthy of taking up space in his world. Instead, she was being erased alive. The applause felt like physical blows, a rhythmic, deafening beating that hammered the reality of her worthlessness deep into the marrow of her bones. The elders bowed to Victoria, murmuring praises of her intellect, her grace, and her divine right to lead. Evelyn stood trembling, her fingernails biting so fiercely into the palms of her hands that warm blood began to pool in her lifelines. She looked at her father, her eyes wide and silently screaming for a sliver of justice, for a single intervention. But Alpha Gregory did not look away out of guilt. He looked right through her. His gaze swept over Evelyn as if she were nothing more than a smudge of dirt on his polished marble floor, completely insignificant to the grand, glittering narrative he was actively constructing for his favorite child. This was not a mistake. It was not an oversight. It was a deliberate, calculated sacrifice of Evelyn's soul to feed the monstrous ego of the family's chosen idol. As the applause echoed like physical blows against Evelyn's fragile psyche, the true horror of her reality shifted from the theft of her work to the deliberate manipulation of her sanity. A desperate, broken whisper slipped past Evelyn's trembling lips, a fragile protest that barely cut through the celebratory murmurs, yet it was loud enough to make the room freeze. "But I wrote it." The words hung in the suffocating air, pathetic and raw. The elders stopped smiling. Victoria's smug smirk vanished, replaced instantly by a flawless mask of deeply wounded innocence. But it was Alpha Gregory's reaction that truly unleashed the psychological torment. He did not yell, he did not strike her. What he did was infinitely more destructive. He leaned forward, his voice dripping with a sickly, condescending patience reserved for dealing with a delusional child. "Evelyn," he sighed, the sound heavy with manufactured disappointment. "Must you always seek attention in your sister's moments of glory? You helped her organize her notes, yes, and we are all very proud of your little contribution. But to claim her genius as your own, it is embarrassing. You are embarrassing yourself. Have you ever experienced gaslighting so severe that you actually feel the ground beneath your feet turn into quicksand?" I want you to truly feel the agonizing confusion that violently hijacked Evelyn's brain in that exact second. For a terrifying moment, the absolute conviction in her father's voice made her question her own reality. Did she only organize the notes? Were the months of agonizing research just a fever dream? This is the insidious poison of a psychopathic family dynamic. They do not just steal your achievements, they meticulously rewrite history, demanding that you participate in your own psychological execution. They force you to look at a black wall and agree with them that it is white, and if you refuse, you are immediately branded as the crazy one, the jealous one, the toxic element ruining the pack's harmony. Victoria stepped down from the dais, her crimson silk trailing behind her like a trail of fresh blood, and approached Evelyn. She reached out with perfectly manicured hands, gently grasping Evelyn's rigid, trembling shoulders. "It is all right, Evie," Victoria cooed, her voice echoing with a sickening, theatrical sweetness meant entirely for the audience of elders. "I know how hard it is for you to keep up. I forgive you for lashing out. I will always share my victories with you, little sister." The sheer audacity of the lie was paralyzing. Victoria squeezed Evelyn's shoulder, a painful, warning grip entirely hidden beneath the guise of sisterly affection. Close up, hidden from the council's view, Victoria's eyes were completely devoid of empathy. They were cold, reptilian, and glittering with the sadistic thrill of ultimate domination. Evelyn was entirely trapped. If she screamed, if she fought back, she would merely confirm their narrative that she was emotionally unstable and bitterly jealous. The trap had been flawlessly sprung. She was buried alive beneath their collective delusion, utterly suffocated by the heavy, impenetrable earth of their lies. The room stared at her with varying degrees of pity and disgust, waiting for the broken scapegoat to bow her head and swallow the poison they were forcing down her throat. It was within that suffocating wave of engineered madness that something fundamental inside Evelyn finally snapped, replacing her desperate need for validation with a terrifying, absolute clarity. There is a precise moment in the life cycle of severe psychological abuse where the victim simply stops bleeding. The agonizing pain of rejection reaches a catastrophic peak, overloads the nervous system, and then suddenly there is only a profound, freezing stillness. Evelyn looked down at Victoria's hands gripping her shoulders, and for the first time in her 20 years of wretched existence, she did not feel the desperate, clawing need to be loved by these people. The illusion shattered, the pieces dissolving into dust before they even hit the floor. She realized, with a chilling wave of logic, that you cannot bleed for vampires and expect them to eventually thank you for the meal. They will only complain that you did not bleed fast enough. Evelyn slowly raised her head. The frantic, desperate energy that had permanently hunched her shoulders completely evaporated, replaced by a spine of absolute steel. She looked directly into Victoria's reptilian eyes, and then past her, meeting the tyrannical, icy gaze of Alpha Gregory. She did not cry, she did not argue. She simply looked at them as one might look at an intricate, disgusting nest of venomous insects. It was the birth of radical acceptance. She finally understood the sick mechanics of the machine she had been born into. Victoria was the glittering facade, the empty vessel that the pack worshipped, but Evelyn was the hidden engine. She was the invisible fuel that kept their entire empire from collapsing into ash. Without her late-night diplomacy, without her strategic mind, and without her endless sacrifices to cover Victoria's catastrophic blunders, this powerful alpha and his golden child were nothing but incompetent frauds dressed in expensive clothing. They did not hate her because she was worthless. They oppressed her because they were absolutely terrified of her power. They needed to keep her chained in the dark, convinced of her own inferiority, because the moment she realized she held the keys to the kingdom, their parasitic reign would instantly terminate. This realization washed over Evelyn like in baptism of ice water. The heavy, oppressive air of the Gothic cathedral suddenly felt thin and utterly powerless against her. She felt an eerie, peaceful smile threaten to curve the corners of her mouth, a smile born of pure, detached enlightenment. She was looking at ghosts. She was looking at a decaying empire that was currently celebrating a treaty they did not even possess the basic intelligence to enforce without her continued guidance. The Council of Elders, her father, her sister, they were celebrating their own impending doom, entirely unaware that the very foundation holding up their grand stage had just irrevocably detached itself. The scapegoat had finally opened her eyes, and in doing so, she had silently sealed their fate. Armed with this chilling new armor of indifference, Evelyn did the one thing a pack entirely dependent on a scapegoat never anticipates. She stepped backward, smoothly dislodging Victoria's manicured claws from her shoulders, as if brushing off a dried leaf. The sudden calm movement caught the golden child off guard, causing her to stumble slightly, her theatrical mask of pity slipping into a fleeting expression of genuine confusion. Evelyn did not utter a single word of defense or anger. She simply turned her back on the snarling wolf throne, turning her back on the towering Alpha, the Council of Elders, and the blood-red stained glass windows. Her footsteps, soft but incredibly firm, began to echo against the black marble floor, moving deliberately toward the massive iron-wrought doors of the King's Hall. "Evelyn." Alpha Gregory's voice cracked like a brutal whip through the stunned silence, laced with a sudden, uncharacteristic panic. He was a tyrant who thrived on control, and the sight of his chosen victim simply walking away without permission short-circuited his dominating mind. "Where do you think you are going? The council has not dismissed you. You have to brief the generals on the implementation of your sister's treaty by nightfall." He was so deeply entrenched in his own delusion that he was still demanding her labor while simultaneously commanding her to credit her sister. Evelyn paused, just inches from the heavy iron doors. She did not turn around to face him. She tilted her head slightly, allowing a soft, breathy chuckle to escape her lips, a sound completely devoid of humor, dripping instead with absolute, terrifying finality. "Let my sister brief them," Evelyn's voice rang out, clear, cold, and echoing beautifully against the vaulted stone ceilings. After all, it is her masterpiece. "I wouldn't want to embarrass myself by interfering with her genius." Before the Alpha could roar his furious objections, Evelyn pushed her weight against the massive iron doors. They groaned in protest, grinding against the stone before parting to reveal the blinding, golden light of the afternoon sun. The fresh air rushed into the stagnant, incense-choked cathedral, wrapping around Evelyn like a protective cloak. She stepped over the threshold, leaving the suffocating shadows, the lies, and the parasitic vampires behind her in the dark where they belonged. She knew exactly what would happen next. Within a week, the Northern Territories would find a loophole Victoria couldn't comprehend. Within a month, the Pax economy would crumble without Evelyn's invisible management. She was not just walking away, she was pulling the life support plug on an entire empire. And this, my friends, is exactly where the true game begins. If you want to know what it looks like when a golden child is finally forced to face the battlefield without her invisible shield, and how a shattered scapegoat rises from the ashes to become an unstoppable force of nature, you need to be here for the next chapter. Hit that subscribe button, leave a comment below if you've ever had to walk away from a toxic system to save your own soul, and share this video with anyone who needs to hear that their silent labor is not invisible. Thank you for walking through the dark with Wolf King Stories. The sun is finally rising, and I promise you, the revenge of the scapegoat is going to be spectacularly ruthless. See you in the next tale. The tale of Evelyn serves as a stark masterclass in the anatomy of toxic dynamics and the ultimate liberation of the scapegoat. For years, she functioned as the invisible engine of her pack, her brilliance systematically stolen and credited to Victoria, the golden child, while her sanity was relentlessly gaslit by an egotistical alpha father. The turning point was not a dramatic, tearful confrontation, but a profound internal shift, the death of the desperate hope that her abusers would ever change. By accepting the grim reality that she was bleeding for emotional vampires, Evelyn reclaimed her power. She realized that their oppression was born not from her worthlessness, but from their absolute terror of her competence. The moment she stopped participating in her own psychological execution and walked out those heavy iron doors, she did more than simply escape. She severed the life support of an empire built entirely on her unacknowledged labor. Her departure guarantees their collapse, proving that those who demand the most from you while offering the least are almost always entirely dependent on your subjugation. Evelyn's silent exit is the ultimate victory, transforming her from a perpetual victim into the architect of her own destiny, leaving a decaying regime to drown in the consequences of its own manufactured delusions. The profound lesson: your inherent value is never defined by the blind eyes of those who exploit you. Toxic systems, whether within families, workplaces, or relationships, survive by convincing the most competent individuals that they are defective, keeping them chained to the role of the endless provider. The abusers are not ignorant of your worth, they are terrified of it, and they will gaslight you to keep you manageable. How to apply this to your life? Stop trying to extract validation from emotional vampires. Take a hard look at where you are overfunctioning and who is benefiting from your exhaustion. If you are the invisible engine holding a dysfunctional system together while receiving only criticism or erasure in return, your most powerful weapon is not argument, it is your absence. Apply radical acceptance to your current reality. Stop bleeding for those who only complain about the mess. Reclaim your energy, set ironclad boundaries, and have the courage to walk out the door. Removing your unrecognized labor is often the only way a toxic system faces reality, but more importantly, it is the crucial first step toward building a life where your brilliance is celebrated, not stolen. Question for the pack: have you ever experienced a defining moment where you realized your true worth and decided to walk away from a toxic environment or relationship? Please kindly share your perspective and story in the comments below. Reading about each other's journeys helps us all learn and draw strength from our shared experiences. If you found value in this tale, please hit that subscribe button to support the channel. Your subscription gives us the motivation to keep bringing you more powerful, high-quality content.